Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sam and I was diagnosed with autism in my 30s, after which I started this YouTube channel. And after a while it became pretty clear to all my viewers and then eventually to me that the ADHD was there too. So I am now what people call an AuDHDer. It's not a catchy name or particularly easy to say, but there you go. And having this combination of autism and ADHD is really common. It's way more common than you'd think, although a lot of people still remain undiagnosed one way or the other. And I believe this is because one of the aspects of having both autism and ADHD is that they kind of appear to mask each other. Now, I don't really want to use the word masking, although that's what it is, because autistic masking and ADHD masking are something quite different, but they kind of hide each other. And so today I want to talk about the way that my ADHD presents and how that hides a lot of my autistic traits from the outside and really hid them from me for many years. And I think this might also work the other way, so let me know if you'd like a video on how my autism hides my ADHD traits. That might be something interesting to explore as well. And of course, this video is my experience only. There are many different ways to be autistic and ADHD and auDHD. This video is not a diagnostic tool, but maybe some of you relate to some of the things that I say. So some of my prominent ADHD traits are talkativeness, novelty seeking, what I call the non-stop brain train, and impulsivity. But I want to be clear, these traits do not cancel out my autistic traits, but they can appear to hide them from the outside. And that's what we're talking about today, is the outside perception, because inside they coexist and, to be honest, not always very happily. And this is why I believe that auDHDers are quite distinct from autistic people or ADHDers, because we don't fully relate to either. And that can lead to us having quite a lot of imposter syndrome even after diagnosis. Okay, so let's talk about my traits. Talkativeness. This is something that varies within me so much to the point where I don't even know whether I could consider myself an introvert or an extrovert anymore. I don't think that label is relevant to me. It's really contextual more than anything as to how chatty I will be on any given moment. In certain situations, I will struggle to stop talking, and in others, I might struggle to say anything or join in a conversation, especially if I'm in a group setting. But excessive chattiness isn't really seen as like a social deficit by society though, is it? It's a little bit more socially acceptable to be on the chatty side. And maybe ADHDers might have got comments at school saying like, will not stop talking kind of thing. But all of my report cards were the opposite. They were saying, I want her to talk more. I want her to contribute. She's very shy. Please say stuff, Sam. So while my shyness and reluctance to contribute in lessons and talk in group settings, especially as a child, was kind of flagged up at that point. As I grew older, I also kind of developed this extremely chatty side of myself. And so the people around me, teachers especially, probably thought that this was just me blossoming into myself, you know. I think many of them may have used that exact term, blossoming. She's blossoming because she's finally talking and now she won't shut up. Once I got a bit more comfortable and got to know people and I opened up and I felt more safe around people, I started chatting more. And I believe that that covered up a lot of the social difficulties and the kind of shyness and the awkwardness that I still had because of the autism. It gets a little complicated and confusing to try and explain because for many of these traits, the autistic trait and the ADHD trait are like the opposite, and it's very difficult for people to understand how you can be both of those things. So let's talk about novelty seeking. And actually, my novelty seeking trait is something that I really appreciate about my ADHD, because it's always pushing me to do new things and try new things. But how does that relate to my routine-loving autistic self? It doesn't. It's chaotic, and these traits definitely conflict. I've learned that routines help both sides of me though. So for me, living with both, living like this is really about constantly trying to find that balance. But from the outside, I don't think I look like a particularly routine-oriented person, or at least I definitely didn't before kids. Once you've had kids, and especially if you do have neurodivergent kids, routines are life. Routines are the only thing that keep you sane. So that trait, in the context of my life right now, that trait of routine orientation, is that routine orientation is like very, very prominent in me, and I might seem a little bit less of a novelty seeker, but that's not really the case. And novelty seeking is the reason that I have many and varied special interests, although it doesn't really look like a typical autistic special interest profile. You know, the stereotype is always like the autistic person is deeply interested in something very inappropriate, and I'm deeply interested in many things, some of which are seen as odd by the outside world, and some of which are not seen as particularly odd, but it's the intensity that I pursue them with, which is kind of common to both autism and ADHD. But from the outside, I look like quite a well-rounded person because my novelty seeking is driving me to say, well, that looks interesting and that looks interesting. And then my autism is leading me quite deeply into those. And I was thinking about this, and I actually believe that my novelty seeking is why I kind of grew out of, and I don't want to use that term too lightly, but certain autistic traits. The novelty got the better of me in the end. And a lot of this happened around the time I was 18 or so. You know, when I left school, I did a little bit of traveling on my own, discovered new food, discovered wine, discovered places, sensory seeking, novelty seeking. And all this excitement and newness really covered up the fact that, my God, I do function better with a good routine. And it was only post-diagnosis that I really understood why, and I really began to put things into place, things that supported me. Because to be honest, during that period of novelty seeking in my late teens, early 20s, I was kind of a hot mess. You know, like I don't want to say I let the ADHD win, but it definitely was given a chance to, like, I let it out of its cage for a bit. And I think when you have both, it's really important that you find balance in your life. So the next trait that I want to talk about is the ADHD nonstop brain train. And this is also an autistic trait, I think. It feels internally like it's more on the ADHD side of me, which is why I've put it here. But my brain is really always on the go, which I can only attribute to my ADHD because that's the place in my brain that it feels like it comes from. Please let me know if I'm not the only one that feels like certain things live in certain areas of your brain, because I feel like I make that up, but there's a consistency with it. And I don't know if this constant overactive brain is, you know, autism or ADHD really. But what it does mean for me is that any difficulties that I do have as an autistic person, my brain is sort of compelled to make sense of them, understand the issue, and problem solve to the extent where I end up finding solutions for these things. So yes, I do have social difficulties, but my ADHD plus masking, and masking is one of those things where for a lot of people, especially throughout your teen years, it's like a problem solving thing. And you solve enough problems, you learn to mask. And learning to mask has got me to a point where I would say, exist quite normally. I know the word normal is a loaded term, but I can exist quite fine in a variety of social situations. And this is also because novelty seeking has put me in many different situations. So I have figured out strategies kind of like for a broader range of situations. And my nonstop brain train is like, choo choo, figure it out. This isn't scripted, whoops. And of course, I want to point out that this is exhausting and it still takes considerable energy because you are not socializing from a kind of like natural point of view. You are still running the programs of thinking, what's the situation? What am I in? You're problem solving as you go. And that takes a really considerable amount of energy. Having said that, having a brain that runs fast anyway also takes considerable energy. So it's not like you're in a worse situation. And being a very active internal problem solver and problem solving all the difficulties I have that come as a result maybe of my autistic traits means that I have managed to accommodate myself and compensate for a lot of these traits. And this hides them from people. People don't see the internal effort. They just see someone who's really tired all the time. So let's talk about impulsivity. I definitely have two sides to me, an impulsive, sometimes reckless side, and that side of me that needs to thoroughly review all options before buying a heated drying rack. And this impulsivity very often wins because action beats inaction. And action often has many more tangible results in your life. So some of the things that I have impulsively done in my life: I moved in with my boyfriend after 3 months of dating. He's now my husband. I quit a job to impulsively start writing a book because I felt like that was a great idea at the time. I moved to the Netherlands. We were living in London, and me and my husband decided on a 4-hour car journey throughout the course of that conversation of like, we don't like it living in London. What are we going to do? By the end of that trip, we were like, we are moving to the Netherlands. It's decided. Did I mention he's ADHD as well? This seems counterintuitive, especially to the autistic people among you who are like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that you would just make those decisions. Because my big decisions, the big life decisions, are the ones that are very often impulsive, and the smaller decisions are the ones that I can really sit there and agonize about. Someone help me understand that, please, because I really don't. But the impulsivity of my ADHD side gives my life more flow than it otherwise would. If I agonized over big life decisions the way that I agonize about drying racks, I'd probably still be living with my parents in the first job that I could get post-graduation. I don't think I would have moved anywhere. And I really don't want that to be disrespectful to people who are also in that situation, because the reality is I would be there if I didn't have a big dose of impulsivity within me. And that's not to say if you're in a situation you don't like, make the first impulsive decision. Like, I'm very aware that there are probably impulsive decisions I've made that I've just blocked out because I don't want to talk about them on the internet. Trying to think of any now. No, they're completely blocked out. I never made any bad decisions. Absolutely no. That's a joke, everyone. But I'm very aware that this impulsive side of me makes me look very different from the outside than a less impulsive autistic person would. I say just autistic person. That's very rude, isn't it? Just an autistic person. But it looks different, and I can't help that, can I? So the last thing I want to talk about is stimming. Stimming is something that is a very obvious outside indicator of autism. And it's something that autistic people have kind of reclaimed. A lot of people are doing stimming on TikTok and I'm not on TikTok or whatever, but you know, it's become a thing that people are showing it on social media. And I think that's really great. So the thing about stimming is that everybody stims, right? It's a human thing. Autistic people appear to stim a lot. ADHDers are more about fidgeting, right? So the way that I stim looks more like ADHD fidgeting because it kind of is, but it fulfills a function that is more like autistic stimming. And I don't think I'm somebody that stims in a very big way. And I don't know whether that's because of masking, because I learned to hide it, or just because I have more little fidget energy. And little fidget energy is more socially acceptable than big fidget energy. This is me trying to classify stimming. We need some sort of a wiki, don't we, of this? But from the outside, you wouldn't necessarily see an autistic person because of the way that I stim, and because I'm a little bit more fidgety than I am stimmy, I think. Like, I do find it hard to sit still. So why does this all matter? Why does it matter that my ADHD hides my autism or my autistic traits? The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I've recently realized the extent to which that happens. And it's not just my amazing talent for masking that is hiding everything. It's the two conditions together that are conflicting, hiding each other. And I realized that what this has meant throughout my life and what this means for me right now is that I have consistently got less help than I need, if I'm being honest. And right now I feel like I'm getting quite a bit of help from people. You know, I'm having to pay for a lot of it myself, but I finally feel like I'm at the point where, yeah, I'm just about getting the support I need. Obviously, different seasons of life, you need different kinds of help. And I'm in the season of life with very young children. So yes, I do need more support right now. But, you know, when I think about this in a grander scheme, when it's not just thinking about me and my needs, there is a big population of people who have both. And I think that it's not just because they're so amazing at masking that this kind of illusion effect or this kind of, hidden effect happens, because it's just intrinsic to the nature of the two conditions that you're you're almost like going between one extreme and the other, and then often that looks like kind of meeting in the middle. So it kind of looks like there's nothing there. I just kind of wanted to mention that, like that's why this came into my head as a video topic. And I'd be interested to know if you think that your ADHD hides your autism, or the autism hides the ADHD. So whether we need basically a part 2 to this video, which is how my autism hides my ADHD. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you next time. And as an ADHDer, you know, everybody,